Hello, I am Darlene Clark. I'm an advocate against horrific child abuse because I am a victim and a thriver and a survivor. And I am telling my story not for sympathy, not for empathy, but because this happens too often to too many people. I have been sexually abused, neglected, sex trafficked, monetarily wise, even by police force, even when married. No one would stand up and help me. But there was always God. My mother came from Germany, and my dad met her in the military, and she had other kids in Germany, and then had another kid with my daddy. They divorced when I was 4 years old. I was 4 years old. That's when my stepmom came into the picture. When I was a teenager, I was shocked when she said something. She said, "I stopped your temper tantrums when you were 4 years old by holding your head full down in a sink full of water till you went unconscious." And I'm like, what? How did I not drown? There had to be God. There's no other way about it. I would never ask my mother why she would do anything, or my stepmother, nor my daddy. I was like a robot. I had to be at their beck and call and do what they say. If they say jump, you say how high. Now, when I was 7 years old, it was pretty fun. But the kind of punishments that they had was, like, my daddy had found out he twisted my nose with pliers back when I was 6 years old. And so I had to have surgery in 2001 on, trying to get it cleared up. The ENT doctor said that it had been blocked since I was 6 years old. When I first went to him, he said, "What happened to your nose when you were 6?" I said, "Well, I fell out of bunk bed when I was 7. I landed on my nose." He said, "No, this was done intentionally to you." So when I thought back on it, and I said, "Well, I see my daddy coming at me with a pliers." He said the plier grooves were still embedded in my cartilage. Daddy used to get mad at me for having a stuffy nose, and he would just let me eat a whole raw onion at night sometimes as punishment because I could not breathe in my nose. And then to know that he did this to me, and he used to put food in the plate and then put it on the floor and tell me to bark at it because I could not breathe right. So I didn't bark good enough, so he sent me back to my room for about an hour, and the rest of the kids got to eat. It was just horrific, and I went back in there, and he said, "Bark at your food." And then he poured it into the floor. He said, "Laugh it up like a dog." So I was able to eat as long as I barked good enough and laughed it up. I loved my daddy to death, no matter what he'd done to me. I would go in there and hug him each night and try to tickle him. He liked people scratching his feet. And that was our little time that we got to laugh and giggle, even though he was sadistic to me at other times. He still had the love for a parent, and at least this parent at least laughed with me at times. There was some joy, some laughter, some fun. So it was kind of hard to see that this guy was a monster. You're kind of like pulled this way and pulled that way. You're having tug of war with yourself on trying to guess whether or not somebody's good or not. Was this the same person, or what's going on? One time when my dad walked into the girls' bedroom, there was my stepsister now, because I had a new stepsister and a new stepbrother when he got with my stepmom. So there was my stepsister and then two of my other sisters and then me all in the girls' bedroom. My dad walks in, he has a 12 gauge at his side, and he said, "Who's ready for hide go seek?" And I thought, oh no, not again. But I don't remember previously that it happened again, but I remember having that thought, like, oh no, not again. So obviously he done this before for me to think, oh no, not again. So we had to run and hide, and I was thinking, he is going to kill one of us one of these days. He told us that it's time for hide go seek. When he finds one of us, he's going to shoot us. And I thought for sure, knowing his background of his anger and his hostility with whips, switches, and everything else, that he was for real. And everybody else, the rest of the kids ran out of the house, around the house, and I'm not sure where they ran and hid, but I kept running in a different direction, and I ran to the garden spot. Priorly to, before we could plant the garden, we always had, it had already been tilled, so we had already picked out a lot of the rocks and all that, because we get a spanking for every rock we left in the dirt. Like a pick and seeds, and every bean we missed on a plant, every tomato we left on a plant. You get a whipping for each one you leave behind. But anyway, I hid back behind there, the hard dirt pile, and all of a sudden my dad was running around the house shooting up in the air while my stepmom was running in front of him, and she was laughing like it was fun. But my dad was shooting it up in the air, and I thought, that shell's got to come back down. Somebody could get hit. Somebody could get killed. Why is this fun? Why is she laughing? Why is she trying to put a stop to this? That's what I was thinking as the kid. Why isn't she trying to put a stop to this? So I waited a little bit. I breathed a sigh of relief because he didn't see me. I was just seeing the backside of him running. A few minutes later, I said, I'm going to check again. I looked up. I didn't see anybody. So I put my head back down, a sigh of relief, like maybe he got his mind on something else. Maybe, let's hope and pray. I don't know how much time had elapsed. And I looked back up, and there he was with a gun. He saw me. He pointed it at me. And I was like, oh, God, please don't let him kill me. Please protect me. He shot, and the dust went all over me. In front of the dust was a rock. The rock shielded me from going through the dirt and getting me. The rock, as I was, looked back up and seen him, I'm like, I got to stand up because he's reloading. He's coming to me. He's getting closer. And something told me, do not run. He's going to shoot you in the back, with an excuse that he was hunting a rabbit or hunting a squirrel, and I just gotten away. So I did as his voice was guiding me to do, and it's like I could not even feel my legs up underneath me. I felt like I was floating, and I was walking on up to my dad. I'll say floating because that's what it really felt like I was doing, floating. But something told me to keep eye contact with him. Do not look away. So to show him you're not as scared, even though it's petrified. So I walked on up to him. Imagine being 10-year-old, this happening. And her daddy in his 30s all of a sudden said, I don't want to say the D word, cuss. He said, I wanted you to run so I could shoot you in the back. Whoa. He literally just said what that thing was warning me. Don't run, because he would say that he shot you in the back to hunt something else. And he just validated by saying that he was going to shoot me in the back. So he went off and said, well, I got to go kill something today, so I'm going to go hunt one of the other kids. So he started walking off, and then he turned back around real quick, went to me, threw down a gun, and then raped me right there. And I thought, okay, God, at least the rest of the kids are safe. I don't want none of them dead. If this is a price I got to pay to keep them safe. I never shared anything with them. I knew that they had known. I just knew that they knew and were watching. I felt the other eyes watching. And it was scary. But my twin sister told me when we started school back, I guess it was 5th grade, our school was right next to a road. And back in the 70s, there was a lot of cars that go by and backfire. So she said whenever a vehicle backfired, sometimes I would have like PTSD, and I would think that it was a gun. And she said all of a sudden I would jet out of that school like it was no tomorrow. And I went to a different mode, like I was somebody else, like I was in shock. She said that they would find me about 5 miles down the road. Of course, they had to call the bus drivers, different help looking for me. My sister said the same bus driver found me several different times. Well, they got tired of me doing this, so they called the police, and the police questioned my siblings, and they told the police officer that Dad shot at me. I didn't say nothing. My siblings did. I was still in shock. I remember coming back to when he pulled into the driveway, and he went up to Dad and said, what's going on? They said that she was shot at. And he said, look at all these bruises and marks, I guess, for the whips and everything that he was using on us. My daddy said, oh, she fell into the blackberry bushes. She just lied about me doing anything to her. She was from the blackberry bush, and that cop looked at me, don't you ever tell anyone that he's hurting you ever again or anything, or we're going to do something to you. So no, I didn't tell nobody ever again, because I done got afraid. I done got threatened by the police that I better not tell, or they're going to do something to me if I told. My dad and my stepmom both assaulted me so much. There's some things I did not know till like the therapy, and when I got back, and knowing that my dad actually spread my legs when I was 4 years old, and I can remember laying on the couch and he used a knife and cut part of me private off back when I was 4 years old. He used a knife on me. I went to a doctor after I done divorced and came to Tennessee about 2015. I said, please do me a favor. I said, no one ever validated whether or not I had been cut down there, that I do have some missing down there. She said, all that's left on one side is just a little bit of skin, about 2/3 is cut off, and you just got like about a third. Well, last year I actually went to a gynecologist, not to a nurse practitioner. So that's the difference between a nurse practitioner and somebody that's experienced with this. So last year, so it's 2022, I went to see the gynecologist, and she said, no, dear, all that you got left on one side is just a scar tissue. a little piece of scar tissue on that one side. That sent me back into a depressive state because, see, I done dealt with the fact that I had a third left on that side. But knowing that a lot more was cut off than what I realized, that knocked me back down worse than anything. I had a boyfriend later on in life, and when I told him about it, and I hope he doesn't get mad. He might get mad with me saying something about this, but I am going by this author name for protection purposes. But he actually went to his job and told them about me being mutilated, and they said she's really a man. So that was really why she was cut. It's because she's really a man. So he came back home and said, "You're really a man," and all this kind of, you know how bad that hurt? To be judged in that way and to confide in him about my daddy doing this to me, and then to be told that I was really a man. I said, well, I gave birth to my two sons, and you met them. I wasn't there when you gave birth to them, so how do I know? That's what he said. During therapy, I also found out that I had been trafficked. I had to get to the brunt when the sex abuse began. When I was going through therapy, I first had agoraphobia. I was afraid to go any places. I was afraid to go even outside to my front porch. I was too petrified about everything when I found out when I had a hysterectomy. That's where the brunt of it began. When I knew that I had a problem, was after I had a hysterectomy. The doctor came in there and said, "Were you messed with as a kid?" He had pulled up a chair next to me, and I thought, oh boy, when a doctor pulls up a chair, this is not good. Usually I see doctors standing there. This doctor literally pulled up a chair. I said, yes, I was abused, because I was just accepting the abuse part. I wasn't accepting the part about the other things. And it didn't dawn on me what he was really saying until Pandora's box kind of like opened with him opening up, saying, I have seen a lot of women mess with sexually, internally. He said, but I had never seen one messed up as bad as messed up as you are. You are the worst case. He said, your kids are a true miracle. You shouldn't have been able to have kids. I said, of course they're a miracle. Both times I got on my knees and I prayed God for her to have the kids. Of course they're miracles. Kids are miracles. And that's the way I looked at it. What I thought was the brunt of the sex abuse was age 2, but the first time that my mom actually sold me to one of Dad's military buddies, when my dad was right there too, and my mom put my naked 2-year-old body on a kitchen table, and that guy and Dad was drinking beer, and I can remember the metal rungs on the old kitchen tables, and they were, the tables were metal back then, and they were colored on the top. And I remember it being yellow, and I remember the sides being, metal silver. With the rungs, they opened the beer bottle, and I remember my mom put me up there. You better lay there still. He paid $30 to do this. You better not cry. You better just take it. The next thing I know is I'm in a bathtub of water. Here I am, 2-year-old, and that water just feels like the slightest movement, I would have toppled over and drowned. I can remember that sensation, like, I can't even move, and guess they want me to drown in here. That's what I was thinking. They want me to drown. I was so afraid to move, and then I noticed some water being blood red. There were other times when we lived in Florida where my mom dressed me up, and I thought it was like special. Mama's got a special time with me. These guys would come up at the restaurant. Mom would never get me nothing to drink, nothing to eat, or anything. These guys would come up and say, oh, she's cute, or she's a doll. And Mom said, you want to buy her? Some of these guys actually bought me. So just bring her back alive. You can do anything you want to her, but just bring her back alive. But I do remember one good guy that bought me. He was not a pedophile, but he actually bought me and took me home and just to play with his daughter. When I was doing genealogy, local library, I met somebody on the phone, and so we decided was going to meet closest library that's got genealogy, next county over. Right when we met, he said, I remember you. And he was an Alabama state trooper. I said, from what? He said, from all the sex abuse videos. I said, what? The child. All of a sudden, I fell backwards. My feet went out from underneath me. I tried to grab the hold of the table because I was going backwards. He was telling me that his dad did over 300 movies, and he said that I was in the majority of them. And he said he still is excited when he thinks about doing me. And I'm like, Lord, why can I not get up and walk? When I was going through therapy and I started remembering some of this, it made me angry. It really, like all these people that's supposed to be my protectors, to know the sadisticness of what they did to know that even when my husband was hearing this, he was beating me at the time too. And the cop said he can beat me all he likes as long as he don't kill me on top of that. So it's like, and the church saying I was such an immoral person when they found out about this, that it's best to let my husband kill me. So it's like everywhere I went, I was being bombarded with evil. People just want me to be gone. People wanted me to die. My main recovery, I think one psychiatrist in particular. First therapist I went to, I will not thank him. The one that I first started remembering, because he was sadistic himself. He said he would do unconventional therapy. He would lock the door and he would force me to sit in his lap and say, not let me go until I told him exactly what he wanted me to say had happened. And he had wet places on his pants. You see that he was excited. And I would tell my husband about it. And he goes, well, he said he could do anything he wants to. It's unconventional therapy. He could do whatever. It's okay with him. The elder said it's okay with him too, because the elder was giving him the money because we didn't have the insurance. It would not. I looked at psych help as being something that's wanted, not something that was necessary. So I had to do what I could, when somebody helping pay a therapist, and I was having to end up being an abused deal. And so one time he was recording me and he was putting a monitor, on my shirt, and I had a button up right here. And I said, well, if I go under his hypnotize, if I go up him hypnotizing me, I'm not going to trust him wholeheartedly. If I feel him touching a part of my body, I'm going to snap out of it. So I felt him go like this, and the microphone was nowhere near where he put his hand on my breast. I snapped out of it. I kept falling down because I was still groggy from being partly under. He's like, I was just trying to fix the microphone. I said, no, the microphone was right here, in the center. This over here is over here. There's a big difference between where this is at and where this is at. He said, well, you shout out. Guess what? The police will believe me. I said, I don't care if they believe you or not, but I'm still going to scream rape or whatever you do, until you let me have that. Because what he did, he actually would lock the door and lock me in there and hide the key where I couldn't get to it. If he had to go to the bathroom at any time, I had to go in there with him and turn my back. It was horrible. And finally, therapy, I told him I wasn't coming back, and I didn't go back. And then, luckily, insurance started covering, and I met this guy, doctor, and I really thought a lot of him. He's deceased now. He was the godsend that was sent to me. I asked him, I said, how come you believe my stories when nobody else would? He said, it's simple. He said, whenever I ask you a question, you answer right away. He said, a lot of other people that answer right away, a lot of times it don't fit in. He said, however, when you answer, it sounds horrible, but it fits in to what you're saying. So I know you're telling the truth. And it took somebody believing me to start change the cycle. But that's where I uncovered that about my stepmom holding me down. This was after my dad died. Her holding me down while her son raped me and me getting pregnant. That's where I had uncovered that. And to know more about that story, it's in my book. I have never confronted my dad. He died. Well, in a way I did when I was 14. Of course, some of the stuff I didn't remember when I was 14, but some of it. But when I was 14, I had pneumonia. And Dad stayed home from church and stayed with me. And he built a fire. And the rest of the family, the siblings, went to church. And I think they went somewhere after that because they had to be gone over an hour. Because when you make homemade peanut brittle, he's like, I'm sorry about what I've done to you. He said, but your stepmom made me. And I looked at him like, but I knew I couldn't talk back to him. You know what I said? I knew. But I looked at him so strange, and I was thinking, but Dad, what about what you done to me before she ever came into the picture? How could you blame her for what you did? Then he goes, well, I'm going to divorce her after this one job. I'm going to divorce her, and I'm going to come back and take you away from here. And he literally said he's going to marry me. I said, Dad, how can you marry me? He said, you're my dad. I said, the church would not allow you to marry me either because it would not be scriptural for daddy to marry your daughter. He said, they will once they know the truth. I said, well, what's the truth then, Dad? He said, I will tell you the truth when I come back from that job, in which he ended up dying on the job, so I never got to find out what that secret was. This was the first time that I was allowed to be myself in a picture, and you could see the hurt child and everything, so I thought that was perfect for the book.